Now we're going to start now. I think the sound is fine now. I think the sound is fine. Guys, like I said, please, I'm going to go slowly. I won't be fast. So we are all here to learn. So if you have a question, please just type the question on the WhatsApp group and I'm just going to answer it from there for everyone. So we only have 3 people watching. That's not an issue. We're going to start. Others can still watch it after we've done. Okay. What do we have here? So we have an example, obviously. I'm going to just go through it and read it. I would like to remind you guys that the only way to learn C programming or any programming language is obviously by practicing. And practicing means you have to keep writing codes and keep on writing. You'll have problems while you write code. There will be mistakes. And you're going to debug your code by fixing the mistakes, and that is how you learn programming. And you're going to obviously become good at it as time goes. So in this tutorial here, we've been asked here to write a program to calculate the average of 4 test marks. 2 are theory tests and 2 are practical tests. Now the test will be entered from the keyboard, so that means the user is going to enter the test as a percentage, and the C++ program must calculate the average of the 4 percentages. Assume that only integer values will be entered into the program. The percentage sign must be printed when displaying the output. Before you run this program, use a truth table to predict the output. So that is just to check that your value is going to be correct for different input values, and run the program to verify that it produces the correct values. Use the following variables name: theory 1, theory 2, prac 1, prac 2, average mark. So this is part of the prac 9 that I've taken. So I've decided to do this because there is something we're going to learn in this prac here. So that is the casting, variable casting. So that's very important. We're going to see it now. And then step 2, it says modify this program so that all the input values are entered simultaneously using one scanf function. Separate each value using a tab space. And then there is another challenge, which is like step 3. We have to modify the program again to calculate the weighted average of the test, of the 4 tests, and also calculate the percentage required in 5 tests to obtain a weighted average of 56% mark. Okay, so the reason why I'm reading is very important you understand, because if you don't understand your program statement, you're going to start writing code and you don't know what you're going to do. So the weighted average is equal to all weight marks added together. Assume the 4 tests are weighed at 10%, 10%, 10%, and 20%. The additional 5 test has a weighing of 50%. So that's like your final test. Now remember the program development procedure. So this is where we start. First, we have to develop the solution on paper. Now, basically, the solution on paper will be something like this. If I can bring this here. So this will basically be your solution on paper. So you're going to say, okay, to solve this program here that's been given to me, I'm first going to declare all the variables. So this is now your solution on paper. I'm first going to declare all my variables, and then I'm going to clear the screen so that you can clear your buffer. That way your program doesn't crash. And then you're going to initialize your variables. On the previous tutorial we did, I explained the reason why we initialize variables. It's very important. And then you're going to prompt the user to enter the value. So this is your program flow. And then you must handle or accept the input value from the user. After that, then you can do your calculations and you display the result. So this is like your solution on paper. And after the solution on paper, you can then develop the algorithm. An algorithm can be either a flow chart or like a pseudocode, something that is more visible or readable. Now, if you use the flow chart, so that will be this one here. So you start just as we describe on the solution on paper. Now this is now your algorithm. You declare your variable and you assign them, and you clear your screen. Then you read the data from the user using the scanf. After that, you can then compute the data or calculation. So this is a simple program flow. We're not yet talking about decision making. On the coming tutorial, we'll be doing decision making. That's where you're going to have more into your computations or your calculations here. And when you're done with calculations, you can then write the data or display the result on the printf function. Then the program will stop, exit successfully. If all of these have been done correctly, the program will stop and then it exits. That means everything is working. Now, I'm sure so far everything is fine. Everyone can understand how to get to this point. Now, once you've done the algorithm, you can then go ahead and start developing your C or C++ code based on the algorithm. This is very important. So if your algorithm here, your flowchart here is wrong, your C++ code is also going to be wrong. Now, before we start developing the C++ code, we can already see the algorithm, what it's saying. We have to start and variable declaration. So let's go ahead and start with the variable declaration and assignment. So I've got my code block here. Then I have to start with the variable declaration. Let me just remove this printf. I'll leave the return 0 there. So variable declaration, I'm going to write a comment. I hope you guys have code blocks also open and then you can go along. If you have a question, please don't hesitate to ask a question so we can answer it for everyone else. So variable declaration. From here then, you have to go back into your program statement where it said assume that only integer values will be entered into the program. So which means at this stage they're saying all your variable must be of type integers. So which means I'm going to declare variable type int. So my theory1 underscore and theory2 and prac1 prac2. So now I've declared these variables as integer. Then there is one more variable, the average mark. Now this average mark here, we're declaring it as a float variable. Float variable, though we're gonna call it average mark, like that. Now the reason why we're declaring this average mark, because it's going to be the calculation for all these marks that you're going to enter. So obviously this one is going to be a float value, that's a comma separated value. If you declare it as an integer, you're going to lose some data, even if you do casting afterwards. So it is best first to declare it as a float, and then you can continue forward. Now we continue reading. It says, so we first go to the flow chart. It's very important. So we've done the variable declaration. Okay. Now we need to do the assignment if possible, variable assignment. So variable assignment, that means you have to initialize your variable. But before we initialize our variable, there's something else here. That is clear screen. But we can do that afterwards. So let's first initialize the variable. That is like assignment. It's the same thing. Variable assignment or initialization is the same thing. So the reason why you initialize your variable, like I said last time, is if you leave it like that, they're going to be taking junk values from your memory allocation. So if you initialize them, you'll be saving space. So it's good practices. So to do that, I'm just going to copy here so that we can try to be creative and save time. Theory 2 is equal to prac 1 is equal to prac 2, and that is equal to 0. So I'm initializing them all to be equal to 0. That way, whatever value, junk value from the memory allocation that are stored here from the integer type is now going to be removed and replaced with 0. So now I'm saving space from my buffer. Then I can include the system clear. Now the system clear, it doesn't matter where you place it. You can place it here or you can place it after the variable declaration, but it's going to clear your buffer as your program is running. That way it does not store a lot of dump files if the program is running for a long time. So we can put it here, system, and then we include CLS. Now this command here is a window command. If you go on your command prompt, and you start typing a lot of things in your Windows command prompt and you want to clear your command prompt screen, just type CLS. It's going to clear everything on your command prompt. So that is this function it is calling. So that's what we're doing there. Now we go back to our assignment. So we've done that. Now what is the next stage here? So you can see that this stage is done. We move to this stage here. We need to read data from the input. So now to do that, as always, you have to ask the user, because you can't just read without asking. The user must first enter. So you're going to ask the user to enter data, and then you're going to handle them. Now from the previous tutorial, we saw that. Now let's do an important thing here, that is including your comment. So that is variable assignment, and you must do this because if someone else come to read your program, they must know what you are doing here. Let's rather call it initialization, like that. Okay, so we've done with that. Then we can now go ahead and say accept input from the user. Now to do that, you're going to call the printf function, and you're going to ask politely, please enter the test result. Then you go on to the new line. This is optional. If you want to remain on the same line, that is up to you. It is optional if you want to remain on the new line, or you want to go on a new line or remain on the same line. It's very much optional. Okay, now you must now use the scanf function, since you've now asked the user. So if you write this program, if we run it, we're going to see that the program is going to execute unless there is something wrong here. Okay, so the program is executing. Please enter the test result. Now we're now going to use a scanf function as your flow chart here is indicating. So we use a scanf function. Okay, now all of these gonna come right if you start doing a lot of practice. So now to make your program beautiful, now this is very much optional. This is just me doing it, so you don't have to do it because it's not required. So I say test 1, and then I go scanf. Anyway, the IntelliSense is already helping us there. Scanf. Now since all the tests here have been declared as integers, so which means you have to use the %d for integer. So that is your %d, and then remember that comma there, and the end percent to reference which value that is going to be holding that. So that is the variable theory1 for the first one, like that. So this means the value or the mark for test1 will be going for the variable theory1. Now from here, I'm just going to copy like this, because if you are writing an exam, you don't have a lot of time. So you have to write fast and don't make mistake while you're writing fast. So I'm just going to copy like that and just arrange your program so that it doesn't look like things are all over the place. Now I need to start correcting. So which means this one here is going to be test 2. And then that's going to be theory 2. And this is going to be test 3. And this is going to be prac 1. Like that. And this will be test 4. And there we go, prac 2. Like that. So you already completed a huge part of the program. If you go on your flowchart again here, you're going to see that now you have done this part. Now you need to pass into the calculations and then display your result. Then you're done. So we're going to write another comment, and then we're going to say calculation, or you can even write processing. That's up to you. Calculation. Don't want to write my own things there. Okay, then from here you know what variable will be holding your calculations. That's the variable that you declare here, float, for average mark. So we're going to copy the float there, or you can just type it. The IntelliSense will give it to you. And then we're going to say float. This variable will be the result of your average. Now the average of all these marks, what is the average of all these marks? That will be all these marks added together divided by 4, because it's 4 tests. So I'm just going to open a parenthesis here, and I'm going to say theory 1 plus theory 2 plus prac 1 plus prac 2. So I'm adding all of them, then I'm dividing it by 4. So the result will be stored into the float variable, and that is the average mark in terms of percentage. Now I'm going to go ahead and display. Since I'm done with my calculations, I'm going to now do another comment, display result. Okay, display result, we call another printf statement, and here we're going to say average mark is equal to percentage that 2f. We saw this the previous time. The reason why for the 2 is because we want 2 comma separated value, only 2 comma places. If we put 3, we're going to have 3 if we want for precision. Okay, and then don't forget this comma here, it's very crucial. Then you must pass this variable that is holding your average mark. Now there's something I've left out here, but we're going to see it just now. So now we can go ahead and run this program, but before you run it, just make sure that your flowchart here have been executed. You can see that you've gone through all the process. Now you can go ahead and start running your program. Okay, so and also remember we are just on step 1 here. So this is just step 1 of the program. We still need to use step 2. And remember this hint here. This hint here, they say you will need to use a cast operator. This is discussed in a note on data types. So let's run it and see what's the story here. Okay, now for test 1, okay guys, you guys can have your calculators with you just to confirm that we're doing the right thing. For test 1, let's say you get 45. Now it's asking you for test 2. So you can see that I'm moving Now I'm asking now for test 2. Test 1 values already been stored into theory 1. Now test 2, let's say you're doing better, you went to 68. Now test 3, you're doing also better, you go to 78. Now test 4, you became a bit lazy, now you drop again to 56. Now you must hit enter to get the average. Now it tells you the average mark is 61%, but is this correct? Now to confirm that, I'm going to just take my calculator here. I'm going to add all the values, 45 plus 68 plus 78 plus 56 divided by 4. Now I'm getting 61.75. 61.75 if you use all these data here. Now where is my 0.75? The 0.75 is gone. Where? Because we're not using the cast operator, where we're supposed to use a cast operator here, so that this entire calculation must be converted into a float variable. If we don't do that, we are losing that. We're displaying the result as a float based on this and this data type here, but our calculations are not done using the float variable data type, so we're losing some data there. So to solve that, we have to use the cast operator, and this is where this hint here come very handy. So to use your cast operator, all you have to do is to include between parentheses there and then add float like that. That means this entire calculation here, whatever these values here are integers, it doesn't matter. You're going to have your result as a float, and it's going to be stored in a float variable data type. Now I'm going to run the program again. Let me just stop it there and run it again. So what do we have? Now I'm going to use the same values that I just used now. So that is 45. I still have them on my calculator here. 68. Enter. 78%. Enter. 56. Then the result is now correct. Now I'm getting 61.75%, just as my calculator shows me. And this is because we added the float casting here. So this is a takeaway for these steps here that we did. Now you know your program is working, everything is fine. Now we can stop it and move to the next step. I hope so far so good for everyone here. Now the next step here, they say modify this program so that all the input values are entered simultaneously in one scanf function. Separate each value using a tab space. So now here it's got nothing to do with your flow chart here. It's the same program flow, but they are telling you just need to modify your code here. As you can see here, you are using multiple scanf function. You are using 1, 2, 3, 4. Now they're asking you to only use one scanf function for the whole program. So now to do that, it's very simple. You're going to just have one line. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove up to here like that. And I'm going to change this one. Instead of test 1, I'm just going to say test result. So that means under this heading, I'm going to get all the test result. Now, one scanf function for all. Now the trick here is very simple. You're just going to enter all of them. So %d space %d space %d like that. So that means these are format specifiers, so they are placeholders. So which means this first one is looking at the value that is after the comma here, this value here. Now if you leave it like that, that means all these other 3% format specifier, they're not going to get anything. So which means at this point here, you need to add some other ones. So this is where you're going to put another comment and end percent, then you go theory 2, comma, end percent, prac 1, comma, end percent, prac 2, like that. The whole modification is done. You've just modified everything. So now you can go ahead and run it again and see if everything is still working. Now it says test result. Let's stick with the same values here. I'm going to go 45. Okay, we are on the same line. Why are we on the same line? Because we're not using a new line. So we need to use a new line, but it's fine. Okay, let me just stop this program and use a new line here, because I like doing things clearly. Let's put a new line here so that we can move from a new line. Let's run it again. Okay, now you can see the cursor is on a new line. So 45, I'm hitting my tab or the space. Then I'm gonna enter another one, 68. You can hit a space on your keyboard or your tab, it doesn't matter. Then I'm gonna enter 78, hit a space again or tab, then I enter 56. Now you can see all my test results are now here. Then I'm gonna hit enter. After entering all of them, look at it. I'm getting exactly the same result as the previous one, 61.75%. And I'm using only one scanf line. You see that, guys? I hope we are all on the same page there. So we've done with step 2. Now step 3 here, or the challenge, is the challenge for the program. And this part here is going to make the program become a little bit more complex. So I've already read this part when I started, so I'm going to read it again. They say we must modify the program to calculate the weighted average. So you know that your tests are always weighted. So like your first test here, they say is 10%. Your second test is 10%. Third test is 10%. And your fourth one is 50%. And the last one is 50%. So altogether it's 100%. So now you need to compute your program so that they average to this weighing. And they said here to obtain, where should I begin to write? Okay, modify the program to calculate the weight average of the 4 tests and also calculate the percentage required in a 5th test to obtain a weight average mark of 56%. So which means we have to compute our program in a way that after getting the values for all the tests, you need to calculate the percentage that you need to get 56%. So what it means here, what they're saying here is, let's say test 1, you get this 45%, test 2, you get 68%, and test 3, 78, and test 4, 56. Now they are telling us to calculate how much do you need on your final exam, like your FISA. How much do you need for the final test so that you can get a 56% mark that will make you pass your subject. So that's what we have to do in the program here. So now to do that, we have to start. Again, the flow chart here will not change much. Most of the stuff are going to change here on the computation and also your variable declarations. So that means you're going to add things on your variable declaration. So now to do that, we're going to leave everything here as integer, that is your marks as integer, and your average mark is going to stay as a float. Now we're going to add some new variables, and if you read your example properly here, they're telling you that you can use other variable yourself. That is up to you. So I'm going to add some new variable. I'm going to say target mark. So the target mark here, the target mark is the mark you're going to need on your final examination. So that's your target after you know all your 4 test results. Now the required mark is the mark that you will need to get. So that is your required mark. In order to get an average mark or a total year mark of 56%, how much you will require. So that is where this required mark variable is going to hold. So that's also going to be a float value, because these are all going to be comma separated variable. They're never going to be integers. Very rare cases. Okay, so we're leaving the system clear there, no problem. The variable initializations, they're still going to be initialized to 0. Now we just need to initialize one more variable. So that is your target mark here. So we're just going to copy it and then we paste it here. And then they say your target mark is 56%. Let's say you want to pass a subject with 56%. So that's what we're going to put it there. It's a float variable. 56%. So that part is done. Now you're moving on. Accept the input from the user. You don't have to change anything here. This part is still going to be the same because you still need to enter the result marks for 4 tests. So you leave it as it is. Now you move to your calculations. Now it becomes a bit tricky here. Before you move into your calculations, remember this part, the 10% for the weight for each test. So you need to process that before you're going to do your calculation. So to do that, we're going to add another comment here. Please guys, you must type this code and repeat it and make sure you understand it, because it's gonna be something like that for your test or exam. So I'm going to write a comment and I'm going to say weighted average, like that. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to multiply each test value, or the percentage that the person is going to get, with the weight average. So to do that, I'm going to start with theory 1 here. I'm going to say theory 1 is equal to, I can open the bracket like that, theory 1 times 0,1, and I put my semicolon there. That's mean here, because test 1 is weight 10%. So I'm going to take, since the user is entering the value of test 1 here, I already know from at this stage here, when I get here, I already know that the user already entered the value for test 1. So I'm going to say, okay, now the new value of test 1 based on the weight of test 1, it will be, test 1 will be equal to test 1 times 0.1%. So that's now going to give you the weight average for test 1. And you have to repeat the same for all the tests. As always, you copy to save your time. Then you change test 2, and test 2 is also 0.1. Then your prac 1 is also 0.1. Then prac 2, I have to just remove there. And you must be always careful when you are typing, because if you're not careful here, you're going to have like another 1 here. Let's say there is now another 1 here, like that. Instead of prac 2, now it's prac 2 1. And when you run your program, boom, there is an error, and then you're struggling, what's going on here? And if you check underneath here, it say undeclared variable prac 2 1, and you wondering what's going on. Well, prac 2 1 here is not defined. It's never been declared anyway. That's why there is a problem. So you have to remove this 1 here. It must just be prac 2. And now when you run it again, and there is no problem, your program is running. So that's very important when you are typing everything. And this must be 0.2, because that test is what? 20%. That is your 4th test. Now you know that all the tests are now been calculated now based on the weight average. Okay, guys, so far so good. Anyone a question? Please, you have to you have to let me know if there is an issue. If you need me to explain more, I will explain it more for you guys. Okay, if everybody's happy, we can carry on. Now, you need to start printing the weight average on the screen, but this is very much optional. You don't have to do that. But if you want to have a visualization of what you are doing, you have to always print it. That way you know if there is a problem. So this is basically debugging. Like people who work in software development, that's what you do. If your program is giving you problem, you put some print function somewhere to print a result on your screen. Then you know, okay, up to this point my program is working. So which means it is at this point I'm not getting anything. So it is one way of debugging your program. So I'm going to put a printf here, and I'm going to say, I'm going to include it from the new line, because from this point here we need to go to the new line. And I'm going to say mark after weight average, or we just leave it like that. Okay, then we go into another new line. Don't forget your semicolon there, and from there you start displaying them. Printf, then you say theory 1 is equal to, now all of these, now they are now float. You must now remember that all these variables, they're now going to be float because you are now multiplying it by a float variable. So the result is now going to be a float value. So onto your format specifier here, you have to now include a float, and you can choose how many comma you want after the comma, how many decimal places you want. So I'm choosing 1. Okay, and then I'm going into a new line, 2 double new line, and then I place theory 1 variable like that. And as always, since you have to repeat it for all of them, then you just copy, you copy, and you copy. Then you need to come and change here. So this is theory 1, this is theory 2, this is prac 1, this is prac 2, okay, and this is prac 2. Be very careful here, and this is prac 2. So we just change the 2 there. Okay, so what are we missing here? Is everything okay here? Now let's run the program and see what we get. Okay, let's enter the values. I'm going to enter the same value that we've been using: 45, 68, 78, 56, and then enter. Now what am I getting? It says the mark after weight. I'm getting all of them 0. Well, obviously something is missing here. Why am I getting all of them 0? Why am I getting all of them 0? Anyone, guys? Why are we getting all of them 0? We should be getting something. But we can see the result after the average mark here is getting 7. But why are all of these getting 0? Anyone? Anyone? Why are we getting them 0? Okay, the reason why we're getting them 0 is because these variable here, they are still declared as integers. But because we are multiplying them with a float value, 0.1, 0.1, and 0.2, that means you now need to change them so that you can get what? You can get a float variable. So they have to be now float. So now to solve this problem here, guys, programming is not that easy, but you have to be very focused, because if you are not focused, you're going to have more problem. So to solve this here, we're going to declare other variable. So I'm going to copy this line here. That's why it says it's a challenge. So I'm going to change this to float. So pay close attention. I'm going to change it to float, and I'm going to it's like I'm declaring double variable. Now it's not the same. These are integers and these are float. They are not the same. And I'm going to come here on my program. Then I'm going to now change this to be the float variables instead of the integer variable. Like that. Like that. And I'm maintaining this one as the integers, the one that the user is entering. You can put all of them as float if you want to, but just to show you that you can do tricks like this. So you've got double variable declaration, one for integer, one for float, to compute your calculations. This is just to explicitly show you guys what you can do. Otherwise, I can just remove this line and leave everything as float. Okay, then here you now have to change. Since this is now the value that you are passing, so this can never be these integers anymore. So this one must also be the float one. So you must remove the underscore there. Now let's run it again and see if we have any difference in our result there. So I'm going to say 45 again, 68, 78, 56, enter. Now you can see everything is working. So theory 1, 45%, because it's weight 10%, you only, that means it's only 4.5 of your total 100%. Theory 2 is also giving us 4.5. Why? You see, because here by theory 2 we didn't change this one to 2. It's theory 1, that's why it's the same value. But for prac 1 we're getting 7.8 because it's 10% of 78%. For prac 2 we're getting 11.2 because it is 20% or 56%. So I must just change here. Okay. Now guys, stay focused, stay focused, stay focused. Now from here, you can now go ahead and calculate your average based on the float, based on the weighing of your test. So we're going to now say average mark. So we can go ahead and just remove this here. So the average mark, so we can remove this and we're going to remove this. Now remember, we're no longer calculating the average of a percentage. We're now calculating the average of the weight. So which means you're now going to add all of them, the weighing percentage. So you must remove the underscore because you are now adding this weighing average here. So you remove there like that. Now this is your average mark based on the weight. Okay. Now you now need to compute another calculation that is of the required mark, because your required mark. Now let me just show you guys something here. Let's just show you something. So let's first print this value here. Let's print how much it's going to give us. So we're going to pass it here, average mark, and then that's going to be 2FF. Okay, everything is okay there. Now let's run this program, and then we're going to see. I'm going to use the same 45, 68, 78, and 56. Okay, now it says that your average mark is like 30.3%. So this means here, guys, if you've got, these are your test score, that means you're going into the exam with the average of 30%. But they just tell you here, they told you here that you need 56% to pass. Now you need to calculate using your program how much do you need. So based on this 30.3% you have here, how much do you need in order to get 56% so that you can pass your subject? So that is the challenge they're asking in this test here. I hope everyone is understanding what I'm talking about here. I hope everyone is online here. Okay. So what we're going to do now, it's very simple. So we just have to take the 56. Okay. We just have to take the 56, which is the target that we already define here. So that's a target, and we even initialize it here 56%, and we must subscribe minus the 30%, 30.3% that we get. And the result is the mark that you need. I'm sure a lot of us as students, we've done this because you want to know how much you need before you go write your final exam. And you want to make sure that you need as a low mark as possible, so that if you don't do very well in the exam, and then you are at peace, because you know you only need a little bit of percentage. Okay, so to do that, we're going to compute another calculation here, and we're going to call it required mark. Did we declare a variable required mark? Yes. So I'm going to copy it, required mark. I'll paste it there. Learn to copy to save time, because if you're going to type everything, you're never going to finish writing your program. So you must learn to copy, but copy the right things. So now I'm going to open the bracket, and I'm going to say target mark. That is the 56% minus the average mark that I just got here, like that. And put your semicolon there. So this is now the required mark. And now I need to output this also on the display. I'm going to copy here. Guys, I'm running out of time here. I need to be somewhere, but we're going to finish just now. So this is going to be required mark. Okay. Required mark. Okay. So we must change here also as a required mark, like that. Okay. Now if we run this, because we need to put a new line here, otherwise it's gonna be on the same line, because this is going to print, this statement is gonna print after this statement, so we have to include a new line here, otherwise they're all going to print on the same line. Okay, now from here I think we can try to run this program. So this is required mark to get 56%. Okay, let's run this program and see what we get. We are almost there. Okay, I'm gonna stick with the values I'm using here, 45, because we already know what the result for these values are, 78 and 56. You can test the program with different values. Okay, so now you can see that you need to get 25.50%. I mean, in the average of 50%, because your final test is weigh 50%. So that is also important. You have to look here. What are they saying? Your last test, your FISA is 50%. So if you need 25.7% as a weight average of the last test, how much do you need exactly for the last test? So in order to do that, you need to get this value here. You must divide it by the 50%. So we're going to put another print function here. And let me try to attempt to copy here. I know I'm going a little bit fast. So which mean here I'm going to say percentage needed, like that. Percentage needed for FICA. Is it FICA or FISA? That will be, so you must just remove this one. Is it FICA or FISA, guy? I think it's FISA. Percentage that 2F, then you have to replace this one here with, what's the value? Okay, so you need to compute here. So what the value that you're going to put here, because they told you that the final test here is weigh 50%. So how many percentage do you actually need to score in order for you to get the 25% that we saw? So that means you need the required mark here, like that, and you must divide it by 0.5, because 50% is equal to 0.5. Okay, now I'm going to run this again and let's see where we get. And once again, I have to put another new line here, otherwise they're going to print at the same line, and I put another one there. Let's run it. Okay, I'm gonna use my same value, 45, 68, 78. Anyone who get these values is going to pass. Okay, so my program is telling me here that you need 51.4% on your final test. That is like the percentage you need on your final test. So if these are your test marks for the year, your final test here, you need 51.4%. If you get 50%, that means you're never going to get the 56% needed. So at this point, we've basically solved this challenge here. And I'm not sure if we are missing anything or someone can make this program better. We can always improve. But we are missing something here. What we are missing here is we need to include the percentage. There are no percentage signs here. You can see it's just the numbers. So in order to put the percentage signs, there is a lot of ways to do that. Now, the very basic simple way is just to add a double percentage like that. Where is the percentage sign? Just a double percentage after every format specifier. Double percentage. Double percentage. Double percentage there. And on this one here also, double percentage. Now, when you write double percentage here, it's the first one is used like an escape, and the second one is the one that is going to be printed. If you only put one, you're not going to get anything. You're gonna be getting some other variable gibberish on your console output. So another double percentage. Obviously, there is other method of doing this. I don't know if I can squeeze time to show you guys. Let me just run this again. Okay, so 45, 68, 78, and 56. Now you can see I've got percentage on all of them. Okay, that is because we were adding a double percentage. So this is one way. Now the other way is because you know that these are characters. These are characters from the ASCII table. So if you can put just one, and then you have to pass the character using the percentage C, and then it's going to print you from the ASCII table. I've got a tutorial on my channel about ASCII characters. So if you want to look it up, you can see how to do that. But this is the very simplest way to print a percentage on your values. Now you can see how it is done. So I think we can stop this tutorial from here. Now let me just check one thing here, because there was something they asked here that you can use a truth table to predict the output. Now the truth table that they were talking about is basically you can have a table like this. So now I've got some values here that I was playing with. So if we run this program again, let's just run this program, and then I'll bring my truth table. Now obviously your truth table must agree with your program, because if your truth table is done wrong, then you're not going to get everything right. So I'm seeing here test 1 78, test 2 56, test 3 45, test 4 89, then it gives me a 67 there. Then total average is 35.7. Then what is needed is 20.3. Now let me try to enter them to see if my truth table is correct there. So test 1 78 space, test 2 56 space or tab, it doesn't matter, 45 tab, and then the